Sky Squad, we are back in the building, and I am going to give you guys some commentary on the Wendy Williams documentary that we all saw last night. If you didn't happen to see it on Lifetime, you guys can check it out on Hulu. It's on Hulu right now. I actually watched it on Hulu Live last night. I had to start a little late because I'm doing a little bit of work around my parents' house. Just forgive me if I'm not on camera right now. I just don't have my equipment here, and this is the best way that I can think to do this. If you guys are into reality TV related content and commentary, make sure you guys hit that like button. Tap it right now. Go ahead and tap it right now because it does help with the engagement. And also be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. I want to give you guys a disclaimer. I am first in no way, shape, or form a medical expert, a psychological expert, or anything like that. I am not affiliated with Wendy Williams' family or the production of this documentary. I have no way of knowing, and I'm not going to pretend to know what the old Wendy would want versus what the new Wendy would want. I say old and new just because I think that people have a general idea of who she used to be. And then there is the reality of who she is now, as it happens not only with people who are going through things that happen with age, but also just in life in general, right? We're not the same people that we used to be even a year ago, maybe even a day ago, based on new evidence, things that we've learned, age, wisdom, all those sorts of things. I'm coming to you guys as someone who is simply a fan of Wendy Williams in general and someone who wants to know what's going on. I can't help but be honest with you guys. When it was announced that this documentary was happening, I personally was fascinated. I wanted to know, where has Wendy Williams been? Where is she? What is going on? And what is her life like now? And I think I have definitely gotten a lot of answers. And I think the first thing that we have to say is, why is this being done? That's a crucial question for me because it sort of goes a long way towards trying to figure out why anyone would want to show her in such states of duress. Because I think that's a valid question. There are many people online who are saying, well, Wendy would not want us to see her like this. There's a lot that's going on. What is there to gain by doing this? Those are valid questions. And I feel like we have to answer that. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to pretend like I have the answers because I don't. But what I will say is this. I do have to wonder if maybe perhaps in the attempt to stage this sort of comeback, there was maybe the thought that, oh, we can sort of chronicle the making of the comeback or the documenting the process of the comeback. Because it feels, when you watch it, it feels exploitative. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. It does feel exploitative to be able to go behind the curtain and really see Wendy in such vulnerable states is at times cringy. But who amongst us doesn't live a little bit of a cringeworthy life to a certain degree? Much less someone who has a relationship with alcohol that I don't necessarily know that she is aware of and that she has gotten control over, to be very honest with you. But getting back to the making of this, do you guys remember the Love and Life documentary that Mary J. Blige did with Diddy when she was making the Love and Life album? It was going to be, I think, her first time working with Diddy in that way since her My Life album. I think that was the sort of logic behind it, and it chronicled that whole experience. If you haven't seen it, I think it still resides on YouTube. Otherwise, you would have had to have the DVD version that came with the album, which is what I had, and I don't know what I did with it. And so I have to watch it on YouTube. It's such a fascinating watch. When I think back on that, I wonder if maybe they were hoping to capture some of that type of magic. But in doing all of these things, I had to wonder, did they do this so that they could get money for Wendy that she could access? Because we find out in the documentary that Will, the new friend manager, has gotten Wendy a separate bank account so that she can access funds, because there's a scene in the documentary where she has literally, I think maybe 1,500 stacks just laying around, right? And or at least a stack, something around that amount laying around in her jewelry box, and he's asking her why, and he lets us know in a interestingly almost performative way, which we'll talk about in just a second, that he's set her aside a bank account that she can access that has nothing to do with Wells Fargo and those whom are guarding her money, right? Now, they do touch briefly on this idea, not really briefly, it's a through line actually, on this guardianship that she has with Wells Fargo, wherein she cannot access her money. We talk about the road that had led up to that, wherein there had been at least $100,000 spent. We learned how much and some of that was spent on a birthday party for Kevin Jr. And then there were aspects of it that were spent on Uber Eats. And a lot of this was happening on her American Express card. It's unclear if he had access or if he was just allowed to use it or if she was using it for him. I don't really understand the mechanics of it, to be honest with you. But the fact that he was a part of it, of this documentary, the fact that her brother was a part of the documentary, one of her close friends was a part of the documentary, her niece and I believe her nephew was a part of the documentary, lead me to believe. And then when you look at the credits and you look and see whose names are a part of the credits, the production credits, then you start to see that, oh, perhaps this is a concerted effort by perhaps close friends, family, or a subsection of those close friends and family to help her gain access to some type of funds, because I'm assuming once this footage was sold to Lifetime, or once, I don't know if Lifetime participated in the filming of it specifically, but once this idea or the footage was sold to Lifetime, then they would pay whomever a lump sum of money or some sum of money for this production, right? That money could potentially go in that bank account, which Wendy could then access, but I'm not necessarily sure who else has access to that money. All right. Clearly, Will seems to have some level of access if he was able to help her set up the bank account, but I don't know whether or not Wells Fargo is providing her with a monthly amount that she is able to spend on bills or whatever in that regard. And maybe she just has no spending money. I'm not really sure what the case is with regards to that. But to me, it made me wonder why. And the money thing, as she seemed to speak about so frequently, seemed to be a big reason why this was happening, right? But I'm only speculating here. And again, this is based on what I saw in the documentary. I do want to briefly touch on, before I get into Wendy herself, this relationship with Will, the manager. It's an interesting relationship because he seems to understand that she has a very interesting relationship with alcohol. But there are often times where I did feel like he was trying to cover for her in terms of not really stating, oh, well, I don't know what she was doing, or I don't know if she drank all this. I know that when I come in, Kevin has this mandate that there's no drinking involved. There can be no alcohol in the house. I come in, I clean out the alcohol, and he does show himself trying to pour out alcohol when it's made available to her by some means. I don't know who's getting her the alcohol. That's another question that I had to ask. Who is getting her this alcohol? Is she ordering it via an Uber Eats or DoorDash or something like that? How is the alcohol getting there? All right, that's another question that I think needs to be answered, especially with all of these people kind of milling around, even though I do understand that there's a point in time that the cameras are down and there will be no one there but Wendy. The other thing that I looked at was, I'm not sure how many of you guys are big into astrology or the signs or whatever like that. I'm not that big into astrology or signs, but I do understand that there is some, at least in my opinion, some validity to it. I'm a Cancer. My birthday is July 16th, and I was looking up Wendy Williams, and her birthday is July 18th. So there are certain aspects of her life that I do understand. There is this aspect that she is she's on camera. She wants to be back on television. She loves, that level of the work that she does. And there's a certain amount of shine that comes along with that, right? The paparazzi, the camera flashing and stuff like that. But I think that there's also the part that I really understand, which is her at home, being a homebody, being in her element, having a comfy and cozy home, and just sort of loving that Zen space, which is definitely a big part of who I am as well. I haven't even really posted on social media outside of stories in like a couple of weeks, to be honest with you. And it's mostly because I spend so much time, I think, creating content for YouTube that it really does leave me a little bit drained in terms of like spending a lot of time creating other content outside of YouTube, which I need to get better at. But anyway, I wanted to touch briefly on that. I think Wendy herself, again, as I stated earlier, she has an interesting relationship with alcohol. I think that's problematic for me in the way that she has several physical ailments that she's dealing with, the lymphedema, the Graves' disease, all of those things. And now that we're hearing more about it, dementia. To take those things that she's already dealing with and then to couple them with previous drug use and now dealing with the level of alcohol that she is consuming, it does seem to be rather dangerous. And I don't know how those around her are going to be able to manage her day-to-day life and career, because I think at this point, I think that there is probably a finality to the career, although that is not what I hope, but it may be what is best for now, for the moment at least, or for at least the foreseeable future, because I would assume that mixing those physical ailments and whatever treatments may go along with those, and as much alcohol as she appears to be consuming, seems to be rather dangerous. It is worrying and concerning for me as a viewer to see this is what's really happening with Wendy. This is what she is dealing with on a day-to-day basis. This is what she is doing on a day-to-day basis. This is how she is feeling. And there's a sort of erraticness that comes along with that behavior that I've seen many people online attributing to the form of dementia that they're saying that she has, or they're saying that she allegedly has, I should say, because we want to be as responsible with how we speak about this as possible. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully as I do speak about this. But when we think about all of those things in concert, it just can't be a good look for Wendy in general, right? It can't be a good look mentally or physically, medically, spiritually, emotionally. You think about all of those things, and then you think about the isolation and then not being around her family. And we saw a stark contrast of how she was when she was in Miami versus the life that she seems to live when she's in New York. And being in New York just seems to remind her of the life that she used to live, which goes way back to what I said at the beginning of this video about the Wendy that was versus the Wendy that is currently. And I think that having to sort of live in this isolation and in this space where she's not around the love of her family. And I got to tell you guys something. Moving from Los Angeles to Miami was probably one of the best decisions of my life, because Miami for me was a place of recovery. And when I think about what she seemed like when she was in Miami and around her family and just, being loved on and being, I think, properly cared for, I just kind of feel like that could also play a part in where she is in her life, and the people who love her most not being able to sort of enforce this no alcohol life in the way that she probably needs. Because as much as Will can go in and clean up behind her, Wendy's erratic behavior is also probably a part of the reason why these people who work for her are unable to really tell her the truth and to really keep her distanced from alcohol and the vices that she clearly seems to rely on being in New York or New Jersey or wherever she's residing, right? So I think that that's also an issue as well. Speaking as a professional who used to work in PR, who used to work, in social media management, I used to work in marketing. I've had all of these little sort of past lives wrapped up in this one life myself. It would be a hard sell for me to be able to work for her as a client or me being a vendor or something like that, because sort of the way that she is speaking with them, it would be a hard sell for me to be able to take that, right? There's moments in the documentary where she tells, I think, the publicist that she needs to go get liposuction, and she's just sort of, the way she's speaking to the publicist, I think it would probably it would be a little bit more, a little bit easier for family to deal with that, because as an employee or as a contractor, who's working for a celebrity, there's a power dynamic there that is difficult for a lot of people to maneuver around. I mean, the publicists seem to do a very, very good job, but at the end of the day, the publicist is there for the check and to get paid. And I'm sure she cares about Wendy, but it sort of feeds into the enabling behaviors, and it doesn't do Wendy any favors, to be very honest with you. So that's my sort of feel for part one of this documentary. I'm not saying that I'm right about everything. I'm just telling you guys my observations, and I'm trying to do so in a manner that feels respectable, responsible, as well as, taking my own wisdom, life experiences into the equation, and also looking at this as someone who is a fan of Wendy's and who really wants to understand what is going on. And I think, like the rest of us, is just riveted by what we see unfolding on the screen in front of us. I will definitely be watching parts 3 and 4 of this documentary to see what else is unfolding. But it's an interesting watch nonetheless. I want to know a couple of things from you guys who are watching this or listening to this, since most of this is auditory and I'm not on camera. Do you guys feel like this is more of an exploitation of Wendy Williams, or do you feel like it's an exploitation for the sake of profit, so that at least Wendy has something that she can survive off of in the interim? Or do you think that these people are also profiting off of Wendy's profits in the interim as well? Or do you see absolutely nothing wrong with this, because at the end of the day, rent will always be due and people have to get paid? Let me know your thoughts in the chatterization down below, and I will catch you in the next video.